However, I am joined with my man, Shobhan Saxena. I finally have a bio for you. Thank you very much, by the way. Shobhan Saxena is an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, and a career spanning more than 30 years. He has reported for the Times of India, the Hindu, the Indian Express, and various other publications in India. Right now, he is an international correspondent for DD India, the international channel of Indian public broadcasting. That is a damn good bio, Shobhan. Thank you for this, man. How you doing? You doing okay?
Morning, Jamal. How are you? Morning to you and to all your viewers who are watching this program.
Oh, thank you. We have a good audience here. I mean, they 470 people decided to come by and listen to me give a monologue. So that is impressive. Thank you for joining me, man. I'm glad that you could join me, especially helping with the coverage of the war or skirmish. I don't know what you want to call it. It clearly was escalating out of control. Drones were being shot at each other. Airplanes were being used to bomb each other. The Prime Minister of Pakistan, Sharif, came out very early, and he effectively said Pakistan has won. I'll show you the clip. I want to get your take on it. Might as well get you to start there. And just to be very clear, the skirmish lasted for several days. And we're in the fog of war, so we don't know exactly how many people died on each side. But clearly it was escalating in regards to its tenor. It wasn't going back down. But Trump comes out and says, hey, I was able to get a deal. Trump says he got a peace deal between both. It may be a truce. We could talk about whether or not it's a fragile truce, and we can get into it. But this is the Prime Minister of India. He comes out immediately and declares victory.
This is against our principles. We have been successful in our principles, and we have done the same with the enemy. What with a very respected nation does. And this is also a success for the army, and the whole Pakistani nation has become successful, and we have won. This is victory. This is great, and we are very.
He clearly comes out and says, this is victory. We won. We beat India back. That's what we did. This is a victory for the entire nation of Pakistan. Is this a victory? I mean, it's pretty wild. Like there's a ceasefire and he comes out and declares victory. Give me your take on that. And what did India think? I would imagine you guys heard that. I would imagine that played on your media. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But I know you're not hearing that for the first time. You covered this stuff as much as I do. Give me your thoughts on that comment.
Thanks again, Jamal. I think we are barely out of the fog of war, and all kinds of claims are being made by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the President of the United States. I think the hostilities or the Indian military action began, I think, on May 7th, 8th night. And from the beginning, we have been talking about this issue on your show for some time. And I said again and again, there won't be a war. There won't be a full-scale war. There won't be a nuclear strike. Nothing of the sort. There'll be some action from Indian side. Pakistan will retaliate, and then it'll be all be over. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I didn't have any information, but the thing, there's a pattern to it. In 2019, India had attacked a location where there was a terrorist camp in the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and Pakistan had retaliated after that. And after some time, after 2 or 3 days, there was a hostility. So this is the pattern of what happens between India and Pakistan. So when the Pakistani Prime Minister says there's a victory, I'm really baffled. What kind of victory is? I mean, there has not been a war. So what have they won? I don't know. But anyway, be that as may, also Donald Trump claimed that he was able to negotiate a ceasefire between India and Pakistan.
I'm glad you said that.
All right,
because I'm going to show you this. So this is Trump's comment on this. Trump comes out and says he got his first foreign policy win. And he comes up with a tweet, of course, it's always in a tweet. After a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I am pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries for using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And of course, he is claiming that it was the United States that secured the ceasefire. And the media in the US was reporting that India was the one who went to the US to get them to do the ceasefire. Give me your take.
This is according to CNN actually. I don't think. Yeah. So I won't trust CNN on any foreign policy matter, and then we can have a separate discussion on that. First, let's come talk about what Trump said. Not only Trump, I think also the Pakistani Prime Minister. He also thanked Donald Trump for the ceasefire. So they're kind of acknowledging that the U.S. role. But to be very clear, no one from the Indian government, no minister, no official has acknowledged that. There has been complete silence from the Indian side on this. And the Indian position, I've been listening to Indian television for the past few days constantly, and also reading what's happening in Indian media, is very, very clear. The call came from the Pakistani side. Look, there's a position in India and Pakistan called DGMO, which is Director General of Military Operations. He's an officer of Lieutenant General rank, and there's a hotline between the DGMOs of India and Pakistan. That hotline is always active. They can pick up the phone and talk to each other about what's happening at the border, if there's some firing is happening. That's when this hotline was established. And according to Indian readout, it's very clear the DGMO of Pakistan called Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, who's the DGM of India, and they had a chat. And after that, decided to announce the ceasefire. This is the Indian position. Very, very clear. Now, talking about Donald Trump, I don't want to really criticize the US president here, but there's a pattern to it. Jamal, you must remember when there was a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, Donald Trump was not even president, but it was him who announced there's going to be a ceasefire. Right. Joe Biden was still president, but it was Donald Trump who announced there's going to be a ceasefire. And because he had sent his representative Witkoff, I think, to take part in those negotiations. And let's see how we all know how well that ceasefire is holding. But that's another matter. A couple of days ago, I think he announced there's a trade deal between the US and UK. There's no trade deal. They have agreed to have a trade deal in the future, right? Again, yesterday, it was announced again on Truth Social that China and US have reached a trade deal. No, they have not reached a trade deal in Geneva. What they've done, they've agreed, I just read in The Guardian today, they've agreed to pause the tariff war for 90 days. Right. They're going to discuss, a trade deal will take months, if not years, So I think Trump probably is the only world leader who posts his own tweets in real time. Right. has a habit of getting ahead of himself, Yeah. And he, everybody knows he believes in winning. He believes so much in, a foreign policy win, a trade win. So I think this is his position. I can't deny there was, of course, there were talks between Indian and American officials, and Pakistani officials and US officials, and that happened throughout the conflict, even before that. It's a known fact. No one can deny that. Rubio, J.D. Vance, Trump, they all spoke to Prime Minister Modi. They also had been talking to Pakistani side. But to claim that they mediated a ceasefire, I think it's a tall claim. And a ceasefire was bound to happen, and it happened. And what are the reasons for it? That will be clear. That will be clear in this soon. The Prime Minister of Pakistan has spoken and has claimed victory. The Prime Minister of India is going to speak tonight in a few hours, and then we'll have more clarity about what really happened. But I'll put it this way: India's interest or India's action was limited to targeting the terrorist camps and training camps or their nerve centers inside Pakistan. That was India's objective. It was very calculated. It was a very measured response. And India made it very clear from the beginning that we have not hit any military installations. But Pakistan responded by sending drones and missiles at India's military bases. India hit back. That's exactly what happened. And now there's a ceasefire because, as I said before, both sides don't want to escalate it to a full-scale war. There was no possibility of full-scale war because of the simple reason the armies of both the countries had not been mobilized. Without the mobilization of the army, which takes weeks, it's a very big operation. You can't have a war. So this was a limited strikes operations from Indian side. Pakistan responded, and now it's over because Pakistan had to do something, as I said before. What do you call it? Face saving, or for the Pakistan military to for the domestic consumption, they have to show. They have to make a toll claim. That's why the PM of Pakistan says we have won. What have we won? There's been a war of 3 years or 4 years or months. Nothing has happened. It's all over in 4 days. So to make a claim like this, I think is a bit exaggerated and dishonest, in my opinion.
I am very curious about hearing what Modi says about this. I mean, because like you said, India's point was, we're going after terrorist camps. And Pakistan's thing is, you've attacked us, now we're going to respond. And like you said, you have to respond. Like there's no world leader that can accept that without a response. The catch is that response going to be calibrated for a face-saving mechanism? Or are they, how far are they going to go with the response? I'm curious, from your take, this truce, if I'll call it a truce, is it flimsy? Is it solid? Do you think it's going to last? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Pakistan violated the truce within an hour or so. After it was announced, they kept shelling the border areas. They also sent some drones, but for the moment, it's holding up. And I think there'll be more talks. Definitely, there'll be more talks between Indian and Pakistani officials directly, and I think it will hold up. Now, I think I'll come back to what Pakistani Prime Minister said and why he said that. I think, Jamal, there are two different strategies at work here. What is India's position? India's position is very clear that in Kashmir, there is a terrorism, and that terrorism is sponsored by Pakistan. Now, it's not a new story. Excuse me. This has been happening for more than 30 years, since the early 90s. And India has responded by attacking the headquarters and training centers of Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, and Hizbul Mujahideen, the three groups which are mainly active inside Kashmir. So that is India's position. What is Pakistan's strategy, basically, is always to internationalize the issue, right? And that's why Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he's thanking Donald Trump because they want international mediation. They want international interference in this issue. So you have to see two different strategies at work here. That's why India limited its strikes on these centers of terrorism. India did not strike military installations inside Pakistan to begin with, but Pakistan responded by attacking India's military bases or sending drones on the civilian areas because they want to create this fear of a wider conflict between India and Pakistan. And when there's a chance of a wider conflict between India and Pakistan, everybody knows both the countries have nuclear weapons. So of course there's a concern, and there will be some international intervention. A lot of countries are talking to India and Pakistan. It's not the US. Saudi Arabia was talking. Iran had offered mediation. The government of India is talking to a lot of world leaders, and so was Pakistan. So there's a conflict of two different strategies here, and Pakistan has always used the fear of nuclear war to its advantage. So this is what really happened.
Why would they want to internationalize it? That's a really good point. That Pakistan went to the UN Security Council. They immediately went to this idea: if we're going to attack, we're going to use nukes. You're right about that. I don't doubt it. I saw it like immediately on social media where they were talking about nukes. What is the motive for internationalizing the conflict? Meaning, if they indeed want to get this kind of international mediation, why? What objective does it serve?
So look, let's go back into history. In 1947, when India and Pakistan became independent, two different countries, there was a partition. all organized by the British. This is the gift of the British imperialism to the subcontinent. And at the time, Jammu and Kashmir was a what called a princely state. It was not directly under control of the British. So there were more than 600 princely states in India and some in Pakistan, which are not part of British India. They had their own the princes and princesses. They ran their affairs, but they had to pay tributes to the British government. So when the British left, they again played a very, very dirty game. They left more than 600 princely states the choice of being independent or join India and Pakistan. This was really chaotic because you have these princely states all over the subcontinent. But most of the princely states, they decided to join India, not because out of some kind of charity, but there was also a movement within these states to become independent, to end the princely rule of the princes and become independent, right? And many Indian leaders, especially the first Home Minister of India, Sardar Patel, he worked very hard to bring these princely states into the Indian Union. Now, there were two princely states, the Jammu and Kashmir, and one called Junagadh. They delayed it a bit, but the king, there was a king in Jammu and Kashmir, believe it or not, King Hari Singh, if I'm right, his name. He finally decided to join India, and they signed a treaty with India to join the Indian Union. So officially and historically, it's a historical fact. It's not some kind of fabrication. Jammu and Kashmir joined Indian Union as a state of India. Of course, there were some conditions, but they joined it. Pakistan did not accept it. Pakistan's position was, since Jammu and Kashmir is a Muslim majority state, they should be part of Pakistan. That was ridiculous because the partition of India, all arranged and organized by the British, was very, very clear. Which part goes to Pakistan, West Pakistan, which part goes to East Pakistan, and what is India. And princely states were left alone to decide their own future. So the people of Jammu Kashmir, the king decided to join Indian Union. That the matter was settled. But what Pakistan did in 1948, they attacked Jammu and Kashmir. And very interestingly, Jamal, the Pakistani army at the time was led by, guess who? By a British general. They didn't have their own general. So there's a British, this is the colonial history, the British footprint is spread all over Asia, blood-soaked history. And it was led by a British general. And they sent in the tribals who live in that area, they armed them and sent them to occupy Jammu and Kashmir, basically. But the Indian Army, Indian Air Force, Army, this protected. But Pakistan managed to occupy a part of Jammu and Kashmir. They still occupy that. So that is the position. The matter went to UN Security Council, and is it still there? But in 1972, after the war between India and Pakistan signed a treaty called Shimla Accord or Shimla Pact, according to which the countries should resolve the issue of Jammu and Kashmir peacefully, right? Bilaterally.
Right.
So it's a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. But in spite of signing that treaty, Pakistan has always tried to internationalize it. And as I said before in your show, Pakistan has acted, going back to its history, as always a client state of the West. And they play this double game. They are partners in the war on terror, but they can also harbor Osama bin Laden. They train Mujahideens. So they have been the masters of double crossing everyone.
Yeah.
They have not double crossed China as yet. Let's see in the future. So they play the both sides very well. I think it's the only country which maintains a relationship with the US and also with China. How's that possible? And
just to be clear, though, your point is that they're trying to internationalize it because they want to renegotiate whatever's taking place in Kashmir.
Because when when the treaty had been signed between the state of Jammu and Kashmir and India to be part of the Indian Union, there was no controversy about it. The only controversy there is that Pakistan is occupying a part of the state. That's a controversy. And India wanted to discuss that issue at the UN. But Pakistan wants to discuss the entire issue. They say it's a disputed territory. It's not a disputed territory. The dispute is that you are occupying a part of it. So, they want to internationalize it to make it a disputed territory, and the whole thing to be renegotiated, which is out of the question. Uh, no Indian government has accepted it, and no Indian government is going to accept it in the future.
Okay, just so I just want to make sure the context is right,
Okay.
because this is now a coherent narrative from India. Part of the reason that the terrorists killed those people was in order to provoke a response, with the notion of being that they can internationalize that area so they can finally try to settle that on the world stage through negotiations, something that is already a settled issue. But from their point of view, they're trying to say, hey, this is disputed. This is disputed territory by definition because we're occupying it. And so if we can get this set on the international stage where there are mediators, then we may be able to get more out of this than what we could get now as an occupied territory. Is that the thought?
Exactly. I mean, last year in 2024, more than 23 million tourists from various parts of India went to Jammu and Kashmir.
Oh,
23 million. That's a huge number.
that's a lot
Because
of money.
Kashmir is a touristy place, beautiful place with
Yeah.
mountains and lakes and rivers. It's really beautiful, and people from India like to go there. So you can imagine 23 million is a huge number. Very few states in India receive that kind of tourists actually. And this year again, a large number of tourists. But this is the tourist season in India. April, May is hot in the plains. People like to go to cool mountain places. So again, a lot of tourists were going there. And the Pakistan, I think, the thought that this is a good time to firstly you damage the local economy, because
Oh,
Kashmiri people, they depend
fascinating.
they depend a lot on tourism. So if you organize a terror attack against tourists, what will happen? Of course, people will stop going there. And a lot of
Shobhan,
people actually came.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is dark. This is very dark. Because
Yeah, it is.
this is now tying it to the Pakistani government, meaning this is not a rogue terrorist group that just happened to kill 26 people, 25 of which were Indian
No,
nationals.
what they call non-state actors have been in bed with the Pakistani state,
Yeah.
and not talking about the Pakistani people, the state, Pakistani state. And when you say Pakistani state, it means the Pakistan military. People have written about it. And some of the finest articles, and most critical articles on Pakistani army have been written by scholars and academics and writers from Pakistan. They call it a state within a state. People often joke, even say it in a light manner. Countries have military, but Pakistan is one place where military has a country.
Right.
Yeah, because
Oh, that's so dark.
it has never evolved into a full-fledged democratic state. I mean, very interesting. When Marco Rubio, he tweeted day before yesterday, he tweeted that we have been having talks between. He spoke to India's foreign minister, and he spoke to Pakistan's army chief. Why? I mean, he didn't speak to India's army chief. That will never happen because there's a protocol. You can't. The Secretary of State doesn't talk to army chief of another country. You speak to the foreign minister of that country.
I'm just trying
Right?
to wrap my head around something. Like, initially, the thought was, okay, this is a rogue terrorist group. But now India is taking a perspective. We don't believe this is a rogue terrorist group. We believe that the Pakistani military was trying to damage the Indian economy. And on top of damage the Indian economy, raise this to the level of an international issue so we can try to gain something that we can't gain under normal circumstances. Basically, India says this territory is ours. You're occupying a territory, full stop. And Pakistan is trying to get this mediated in a way where they can try to get more of that territory, let's say in a internationally accepted stance. And it took 26 people to be killed to do that. That is heavy. That is very heavy. And
Yeah,
that's like
this
a
is very, very,
revelation that's very heavy.
it is very cynical, but this is not the
Yes.
first time it has happened. I mean, um, and then Jamal, in the past 30 years, more than 100,000 Kashmiris have been killed by militants, more than 100,000. And because these people oppose the agenda, the people oppose terrorism, and they have suffered. Actually, they bore on the brunt of the terrorism in Kashmir. So that has been Pakistan's strategy, and especially after 1971, when they lost the conventional war with India very, very badly, they decided to turn to terrorism because they know that in a conventional war they have no chance against India. So they invented a new strategy of bleed India with thousand cuts, and terrorism here and terrorism there, so that India spreads its military resources in fighting terrorism and not defending the border. So it is a cynical ploy, very sinister strategy. But because Pakistan has never evolved, as I said before, into a fully functioning democratic state, and the army continues to call the shots in that country. Literally, we all saw what they did to Imran Khan and General Asim Munir, who's now the chief of the army. He was the key player in that coup against Imran Khan, because Imran Khan was not only uh, trying to get good relations with Russia, he's also trying to have good relations with India. He was praising India's foreign policy in public rallies, and that is completely unacceptable
Too
to the
far.
Pakistani army. And they sent him to prison. This is the history of Pakistan. All prime ministers of Pakistan have either been hanged or sent to jail or sent into exile, or they just disappear. You know, I mean,
I'm sorry, please finish. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, in that country, a journalist just disappear on the road. I mean, they're going to work and then don't come back home. It is a very, very common practice in Pakistan. Human rights activists, lawyers. So and here the West is at fault. They've never held Pakistan to account, especially the United States, because they've been using Pakistan as a client state. Of course, it's a relationship that works to the advantage of both the sides, going back to 70s in the war of Mujahideen and the war on terror, and they have flooded Pakistan with billions and billions of military aid, mind you. They've never given money for education or healthcare or public transport,
We don't do
which have
that.
been broken.
We
But
don't do that.
always
We don't
money
do that
for,
anywhere. To be honest, though,
yeah,
we don't.
yeah, F-16s and you name it, all kind of weapons, uh, in Sherman tanks and Patton tanks, and we remember the name because when India had this war with Pakistan 65 and 71, it was all with American arms, American fighter
Is
jets,
that right? You're fighting. Is there any
saber
belief
jets, yeah,
that
exactly.
America had something to do
America,
with these terrorists? Like, meaning this
sorry.
notion of, is there any belief in India that America had something to do with this? Basically, that these terrorists didn't come out of nowhere, that these terrorists on some level was pushed to create a conflict between India and Pakistan with the idea of destabilizing this region as being bad for China, especially with like the Belt and Road or BRICS, for example. Because if I'm not mistaken, Pakistan is part of the Belt and Road, China. India is part of BRICS, again, China. And if there's a conflict between these two, it is right there basically on the Chinese border. And it's affecting this notion of any kind of interoperability between these countries and China. Is there any belief that the US has something to do with it? Or is the belief just no, Pakistan has its own agency and they have wanted this notion of international mediation for decades? And this is the opportunity to get it.
No, I've heard the theory about BRICS and a wider conflict between US and China in the subcontinent. I think it's just a theory. I mean, this attack has Pakistani fingerprints all over. I mean,
Okay.
and Jamal, also look at the if you look at the macro picture, the bigger picture in the world. I don't think the US or China need another war at the moment, a bigger conflict. They Donald Trump said he's going to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. It's more than 4 months, and uh, I mean he can't even get the two sides to agree to a ceasefire. You know,
Yeah.
they called Zelensky to the White House, and humiliated him and insulted him, and 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 Trump has even threatened Russia with more sanctions. I don't know what more sanctions can you apply against
They have
Russia, but you
25,000.
can't even
Yeah.
yeah, you can't even you can't even so that is a big, I think, Hamas Israel conflict not been resolved.
Right.
Russia Ukraine war not resolved. And you have started a tariff war across the world. I think there's too much on everyone's plate at the moment to have a war between India and Pakistan
Yeah.
will not help anyone. And,
Yeah.
and I don't think some people also believe in India that China would have entered this conflict on behalf of Pakistan. I think that's not possible. Pakistan, China is not interested. China is not looking at any military conflict
Mm.
at this moment. They don't want it. India doesn't want a military conflict. As I said before, it was very, very clear a limited operation against jihadi organizations inside Pakistan. India's focus is absolutely different. Economic growth. India just became the fourth largest economy in the world, and now they
Yeah.
want to be the third largest economy. So the focus is somewhere else. But Pakistan, because they don't have anything to speak of in the name of economy, is $370 billion. There's no industry, rampant poverty. People are suffering. So Pakistan has this Kashmir obsession, and they believe that it is the idea of getting Kashmir from India that unites the country. Pakistan is facing a huge, massive insurgency in two states, in Balochistan and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is border with Afghanistan. Massive insurgency. The soldiers are getting killed every day. Yesterday there was a big attack, and day for is the same. So they to keep the country together, and also fundamentally the military wants to keep itself in power, and they want to enjoy all the fruits of power, and that can only happen when there's a conflict with India or there's a fear of a bigger conflict of India that unites the country. That's what they believe. And I'm not sure it was going to work this time because the Pakistan has not resolved some of the very basic problems they have. And since this Imran Khan episode 2 years ago, I think the Pakistani army has really damaged its reputation, its image within the country. And there are a lot of people, the first time in the history of Pakistan, who are questioning the legitimacy of Pakistan army and their role in the country's political matters. So this is not the end of affair now. I think the repercussions will happen maybe slowly, but inside Pakistan and not in India. So that's why Shahbaz Sharif has to go on national television and claim victory. He has to do it,
Yeah.
because he has to build a narrative. He has to claim victory. He has to thank Donald Trump because that is a part of his strategy, to internationalize the issue, which is basically a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. That is my understanding of the whole situation.
Shobhan, great breakdown. You always have great breakdowns, and I love the historical context. Like when I'm a sucker for the historical context of countries and how those countries like evolve, and you are uniquely talented at giving and weaving that into the current day politics. And by the way, that's always lacking. Like if you're watching mainstream media, they have a memory of like 5 minutes, right? They only remember like 5 minutes of things that happened before. I love the fact that you can go back to 1948, 1942, 1930 something and explain it in this kind of evolving context of why things are happening. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you,
just
Jamal.
your
It's
bio,
always a pleasure. It was always a pleasure to talk to you.
oh man, it's always a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I'm fascinated by this. Your knowledge on this is just amazing. Shobhan Saxena, he's an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, in a career spanning more than 30 years. He has reported for the Times of India, the Hindu, the Indian Express, and various other publications in India. Right now, he is international correspondent for DD India, the international channel of Indian public broadcaster. Fantastic, man. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. All right. That was a great